Following the recent Israeli elections, a striking image circulated online. It showed Theodor Herzl, the father of modern Zionism, burying his head in his hands and looking distressed. The caption below him reads, "Lo hitkadvanti et zeh," this is not what I had in mind. Israeli leftists were sharing this meme widely following the results of the election a couple of weeks ago. The message seemed clear. The new government would seek to take the Zionist dream, lihyot am chofshi be'artzenu, to be a free people in our land, to a dangerous and racist extreme. Let me explain. Bibi Netanyahu, even while facing corruption charges, was once again elected as prime minister. In order for his Likud party to garner enough votes, Netanyahu invited far right-wing and Orthodox parties into coalition, including Otzma Yehudit, headed by Itamar Ben-Gvir, and Tekuma, the religious Zionist party, headed by Bezalel Smotrich. Ben-Gvir has been charged with hate speech and inciting racism against Arabs, and has publicly expressed admiration for Baruch Goldstein, the Jewish settler who in 1994 murdered 29 Muslim worshippers in Hebron. He calls for the deportation of terrorists from Israel and says he will fight for the Jewish character of the state and for expanding settlements. Smotrich is known for calling himself a proud homophobe, for advocating for segregation between Arabs and Jews, and for an extreme expansion of settlements. This new coalition follows the breakdown of the previous coalition, which included left, center, and right-wing parties, as well as an Arab-Israeli party, Ra'am, a historic first. That coalition had promoted the notion of shared society among all the diverse sectors of Israel. Tom Friedman's headline in last Friday's New York Times said it all. The Israel we knew is gone. Israel, he warned, as headed by racist, anti-Arab extremists, is entering a dark tunnel. For those of us who love Israel and believe in a democratic Jewish state that treats all of its residents equally, this election hurt in our kishkas. But just as it would be wrong to characterize all Americans based on whom we elect to office, it's very wrong to characterize all Israelis as supporting the racist ideas of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Many do not. Only about 11% of Israelis voted for the far-right religious Zionist party. That's terrible, but it should be kept in perspective. Note as well that voter turnout in this election was 71.3%, considerably higher than our own in the 2020 presidential election. In their fifth election in 3 years, let me say that again, their fifth election in 3 years, Israelis remain highly engaged in their robust participatory democracy. And the losers accepted the results. No one cried foul and refused to concede. As for those who did vote for the winning parties, it's worth stepping back and trying to understand why the vote went as it did. Rather than immediately rushing to judgment, it makes more sense to approach our Israeli brothers and sisters with curiosity and compassion, to see what we can learn from the votes that they cast. As some pundits are arguing, this election reveals the great and understandable fear that many Israelis have of their Arab neighbors. Both Arabs and Jews are still reeling from the civil unrest last year, when mobs from both communities were brutally attacking and killing one another in the streets. Both communities feel vulnerable. The gulf between them is widening, and there is a sense of mutual distrust. Like Jewish Israelis, Arab citizens of Israel hold diverse views. While many feel at home there, seek equal rights as a minority in the Jewish state, and want Jewish Israelis to see them as neighbors, others identify as Palestinian. They may endorse terrorism and want to see an end to the Jewish state. Israel is strong, but many Israelis are worried about their survival and the survival of a Jewish state. Rabbi Daniel Gordis wrote a response to Tom Friedman's article aimed at helping Americans better understand the outcome of this election, and I encourage you to read it. Gordis reminds us that in 1967, when Nasser predicted that Egypt would destroy Israel and drive the Jews into the sea, Israel surprised the world with a stunning military victory. And in 1977, when Israel elected as Prime Minister Menachem Begin, whom the world regarded as a dangerous terrorist, he invited Sadat to Israel, made peace with Egypt, and won the Nobel Peace Prize. Israel never ceases to surprise and amaze us. At this moment, when so many are predicting doom, we should remember that. Gordis also encourages us to reflect on a deeper reason we may be so troubled by the election results. As American Jews, we wish that Israel perfectly lived up to our ideals and could always make us proud. But Israel, like any other country, wrestles with competing values and geopolitical realities. Like any other country, it has its moments of shimmering pride and its moments of shame. And Israel, more than many countries, must operate in an exceedingly dangerous neighborhood, facing mortal dangers unknown to Americans. He writes, "There are many people around the world who want Israel to be something it does not wish to be. They want it to be successful but humble. They want it to be strong and secure, but still desperate for foreign support of all sorts. They want it to be Jewish, but in a nice kind of way. A country traditional enough to be heartwarming, but not so traditional that it would dare imply that less intense forms of Jewish life cannot make it. A country steeped in memory, but also one that is finally willing to move on. An Israel moderate in every way would be an Israel easy to love. It would be a source of pride, but not a source of shame. It would be an Israel that would make us feel great as Americans and as Jews. The only problem is that Israel doesn't exist, and it never has. Of course, there's also never been an America like that or an England like that. But Israel is somehow expected to hover above the messiness of history, above the sort of ugliness that statehood always brings with it. Tom Friedman famously called Israel Yad Vashem with an Air Force. True, it doesn't always make Israel lovable, but it does give it meaning and the ability to survive. Rabbi Gordis shows us that viewing Israel through the prism of myth and fantasy will often leave us feeling betrayed. For some of us, Israel may be hard to love. For others, that love comes easily, no matter who is leading the government. For those of us who are wrestling with the question of how we can continue to love an Israel that we may not understand and feel distant from, I offer a poem that inspires and sustains me in my love for this complicated country. In 1982, during the Lebanon War, Ehud Manor wrote a poem that has become a rallying cry for all of us who love Israel and won't stand idly by. Ein li eretz acheret, I have no other land. Even if my land is aflame, just a word of Hebrew pierces my veins and my soul. With a painful body, with a hungry heart, here is my home. I can't keep silent in light of how my country's changed her guise. Lo eshtok ki artsa shinta et paneha. I won't quit trying to remind her. In her ears I'll sing until she opens her eyes. Here is my home, Kan hu beiti. If anything, we should see this election as a call. It summons us, urging us to get closer to Israel, to learn, to seek deeper understanding, to visit Israel, to get to know Israelis, to approach them with curiosity and compassion. What is their history and what is their present reality? What are their fears, their hopes, and their dreams? I think that's what we would want from Israelis as we try to cope with our own political and social turmoil here in the United States. Most of all, I believe that we can't give up on Israel. Ein li eretz acheret. Israel is our spiritual home, the only one we have, and it's the physical home of the Jewish people, 7 million of us. As we contemplate what's going on in Israel and here in the USA as well, we might think about a moment in this week's Parsha. In the story of Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, Abraham's son lies on the altar, seemingly doomed, and with him the Jewish future. But just at that moment, Abraham hears a different voice calling to him. He lifts his eyes and sees a ram, and Isaac is saved. Jews are always being called to look for the ram, to look up, to seek a different and better way. And again, we have found it. As Rabbi Gordis writes, the one thing that we give up by virtue of being a member of the Jewish people is the right to despair. The right to despair is simply one we do not have. We can and should be worried. We can be disappointed, and we should grimace, but we cannot give up. Even if Friedman is right that this could be a tunnel, tunnels have exits. That's what makes them tunnels. Because a viable Jewish people without a Jewish state is unthinkable. This is not the moment for despair. Instead, we need to work to understand why what happened happened, and then together find a way out to the light on the other side.